I wondered if you could do a thought experiment for me. Like, what would a physical Bible Project church look like? Like, let's just like brainstorm. Like, I mean, like, I mean, you kind of have that now in a sense, like you're an organization that's a community, but what would that look like to you, John?
That's a big question.
It is.
I guess I'll say maybe I'll take the thought experiment this way. I've uh, I was very influenced by a guy who I built my first business with, and he was actually my youth pastor when I grew up. And he went through multnomah, uh, and is a great dude. And he really had this clear vision for, well, he also kind of was tired of churchianity. Um, and he kind of had this thought of, and a lot of this came from him visiting Israel and seeing how family-centered Jewish culture is and kind of be inspired by that. But then also the sense of like, man, I want to rethink how to do church. How can church, how can my spirituality be centered first and foremost in my own family, in my own household?
Yeah.
And I love that word household because you see that in the New Testament. It's like there's these households, and households were saved, and churches met out of households, and there's like the centering within our households. And so during COVID, we couldn't go to church, and my family just was like, okay, let's just do church in our living room. Here we go. And just we started doing it, and we just really loving it. And then at that time, there's so many other families that were trying to figure that out too. And I had a lot of friends who were kind of in between churches. They just kind of felt like they didn't have, they felt a little lost at sea. And so my best thought experiment is what I just started calling like a house church co-op, um, where we get together just to help us live more intentionally, through our families, and make our spiritual life um, center around our family life. So what does that mean? It might mean we do a worship kind of gathering in our house, but it might mean the way we do meals. It might mean the way we do holidays. It might mean the way we do whatever. But actually, we come together as like this group of families to just kind of learn from each other and like give each other advice. And then through that networking and learning and bringing people in to give us ideas and practicing things and teaching each other things, that through there would become like networks of families being like, hey, let's go do this thing together. And so it kind of become more of like the way you would think of like a co-op. And I I get really interested in what I think the church is meant to be more decentralized. There should be this really decentralizing property to the church where it's highly organized, and that when you meet other families and other communities that are following Jesus, you feel connected and you're on mission with them. But then at the same time, there isn't like these institutions that rise up, and there's like this church and that church and this church and that church necessarily. And but maybe there are, but it's in a way that's just supporting
Yeah.
families. Um, so if I had to start anything, um, and what I would pitch would be something kind of like that. And what it would be is it's trying to make every parent like the pastor of their household, um, then leaning on other parents who might be doing it better in some ways to help pastor them, but not in any official way. Or like, okay, now you're my pastor, and now I'm tithing to you, or you're doing this to me, but like in a much more decentralized, like organic way. And maybe it would never work, but
Oh man,
yeah.
I love it. And it's what it does is it when you're decentralization, what you're talking about is it removes that mentality of like a gang, first of all, that like you know what I mean? Like, oh, I go to this church or I go to that. But then also, it's absolute power corrupts, no matter what system you're in. And we see so much of that in churches, mega churches and things like that. Is like the larger they get, there seems to be this sliding scale that there tends to be power struggle sometimes in there. So it's like even the passage from when Jesus says, if shepherd lost one of his sheep out of 100, he would go and find it, right? Well,
Mhm.
in that parable, a shepherd is one shepherd to 100 sheep, right? Like that's a good paradigm, like one person leading 100 people. And I'm not saying the Bible is trying to say that, but like when you have one person that's leading 250,000 or a million, it's like what kind of connection, impact, or is really happening. And decentralization, what else it does is what you talked about, and what is so beautiful about the Bible Project is it removes the business from church, right?
Mhm.
Like, and it puts it out to what we're supposed to be really about, is learning how to follow Jesus more, loving our neighbor as ourself, and helping God's kingdom come here on earth as in heaven.